Well, hello and
Well,
welcome
hello
to
and welcome to
News
News
18
18.
Digital. Today, we're actually discussing one of the issues that went viral on social media over the weekend, which involved an Indigo flight. Let me just first recap what really happened. There was a particular family that was boarding an Indigo flight from Ranchi. They had a specially abled child. Now, there are two versions that we know so far. The airline is claiming that the child was quote unquote in a state of panic, was unfit to board, thus, the family and the child were denied boarding. But many co passengers and eyewitnesses have now debunked these claims. They, in fact, have gone on to say that yes, the child could have been crying initially, but by the time the passengers were ready to board the flight, the child actually was pretty normal. He'd, in fact, calmed down. Then, why deny the boarding? Where do things currently stand? You've got two statements that have come in from Indigo Airlines. They have gone on to say, we stand by the decision that was taken by a team at the Ranchi airport. We heard from the CEO, Ronojoy Datta, who in fact went ahead and said, we would like to give an electrical wheelchair to the family. But the family has now denied this offer. They, in fact, have filed a case saying they were humiliated at the Ranchi airport. The DGC has also constituted a team. Civil Aviation Minister has also said I believe I just lost that connection, but if both of you can hear me now, Manisha is with us. She was one of the eyewitnesses at the Ranchi airport, and Captain Amit Singh is an aviation expert also joining us on the broadcast. Manisha, let me begin with you first because currently we have two versions. The airline is saying the
Is saying
child
the child
is for boarding. We had to deny boarding to the entire family. You put out that social media post after which it went viral. Could you talk to us about what you saw?
Sure. So, the social media post details the humiliation that the family and the child experienced. And I'm really glad I'm hearing it first time from you that the family has filed a case saying that they were humiliated. So I am, so this is only, sort of it only goes to completely demonstrate, how callous and how absolutely disrespectful the behavior of the Indigo staff was. I have shared in many places, the Indigo staff, their entire premise was that the child would be unsafe for other passengers. But by now, it's become absolutely clear that security, the whole issue of unruly behavior of a child with with disabilities and of safety is no longer the issue. It was what happened in Ranchi was really an issue of outright humiliation, discrimination, and denial of the family's dignity. So that's what really happened.
Manisha, I want to
Manisha, I want
understand
to understand
what has been the
what has
biggest
been the
bone of
biggest
contention
bonus.
is, was the child in a state of panic? Was the child screaming, shouting when you saw the child for the first time? And what was the status of the child when passengers were boarding the flight?
When the child came to the airport, he was in distress. Now, this is a child with disabilities, and so his expression of distress was not quote unquote normal, as the Indigo manager kept saying. He has to behave normally. So he was crying out. He was letting out sounds. Which caught the Indigo manager's attention, and he was just crying because he was distressed, right? There are so many children across airports, right, who cry. So
Hmm.
but at the time of boarding, we have videos. The videos have gone viral showing the child was sitting very quietly for a good 15-20 minutes at the point of sort of boarding, and in his wheelchair. And the man from Indigo kept saying, this person is panicking. All we could see was a quiet boy. He had been fed, he had had water, and he was just being humiliated because he was being told that you are panicking, and he was just terror stricken. He was quiet.
Okay.
Okay,
Captain Amit, I
Captain
want
Amit,
to
I want
understand
to
from
understand
you
from
what
you
is, as
what
far as the procedure that is followed in cases like this. The airline is saying unfit for traveling could have been a concern for other passengers as well. What are the guidelines and procedures in a case like this?
See, firstly, every citizen of the country has the right to freedom to travel and equality, a right to liberty and life. So all these are guaranteed by the Constitution. Then comes the Act. You have the Disability Act, which basically ensures that people with disability have the right to equality, life, and dignity. So dignity is important. Respect for his or her own integrity equal with others. So there is a sense of equality which must be there. You cannot say that I see a person on a wheelchair, so this behavior is appropriate or not appropriate. You can have n number of bawling children on flights or on the boarding gate. You cannot deny everybody just because the person is bawling. So there is a need for empathy, basically. If you see a child bawling, you ask the parents, is there anything that any assistance that you need? How can we help? So that wasn't there. Procedurally, if you see, the DGCA cards are very clear that the moment the disabled person or person with the restricted mobility arrives at the airport, it is the job or the responsibility of the airline to ensure seamless travel from the airport till the aircraft.
Hmm.
Now, they are also supposed to maintain a database of people with special needs that is required as per the regulation. Now, I heard the CEO saying that this child has traveled 50 times, which means they're aware.
Correct.
But
Hmm.
the idea is that when the person checks in, the check-in staff should there should be
Hmm.
a flag which pops up that this is a child with special needs and is the child okay. So somebody should look at the child at that stage. Is there any assistance required? Is a doctor required? Can we help? But that wasn't done. At the last stage, at the boarding gate, you say, no, I don't feel or I don't think the child is fit to travel. That is purely subjective. Uh, and it could be because of an on-time performance or the
Hmm.
manager foresees that if we spend more time looking at the child or providing assistance, our flight will get delayed. So why not send the child on the next available flight and deny boarding here? But even in case the child is denied boarding for whatever reason, it has to be given in writing to the parents.
Okay, so
And
Captain Amit, I want to understand two things here. The airline has gone on to say that this is a family and the child has traveled with us before. So, if our intent wasn't in the right place, why would the family come back and fly with us? That's one concern. That is this the max that the airline could have done? And secondly, the decision that was taken by the manager at the Ranchi airport, was he does he have the right to deny boarding in a case like this?
well, in a case where the person sees that safety or security is going to be jeopardized, so we need to understand what safety and security means here. A
Hmm.
child cannot be basically subject to those regulations which are meant for unruly passengers, for those people who fail to comply with rules on board or the instructions of the cabin crew or deliberately try to cause harm or disorder in the cabin or with the flight deck. So those are different levels of unruly passengers, and those are basically offenses committed on board. So you cannot put a child, a teenager, under that act or rule to deny boarding. Uh, if you look at good order and conduct on board,
Hmm.
if the child is suffering from epilepsy or mental disorder, so there is an act under 24A which says that such people are prohibited to travel, but there
Okay.
are provisions. The provisions say that if there is a medical certificate or a registered medical practitioner gives a certificate
Hmm.
fit to travel, the person is accompanied by an attendant, which the parents were, and there were doctors on board who were willing to vouch.
Yeah.
So, under these set of circumstances, the child could have traveled. The whole purpose is that you have a rule and you have a spirit of the rule.
Hmm.
So, don't go into the nitty gritties and try to pick out a rule which, to your convenience, says that this child cannot board. That is what the company is doing. But the spirit of the rule is that we have to ensure or facilitate the travel of disabled people to help
Correct.
them. The parents, as it is, are in a difficult condition,
Hmm.
having a child with difficulties or whatever
Correct.
disability
Hmm.
is there. On top of it, this is kind of a humiliation that
Hmm.
in full public view you are being
Correct.
told denied boarding.
Hmm.
uh, it is a good idea that you take the family to the side or to
Hmm.
another lounge and explain to them that this is the
Hmm.
situation. Are you willing to help us? So you
Yeah.
seek help rather than imposing on them that
Yeah.
no, you
So
cannot
the
go.
manner in which this communication also happened has raised a lot of questions. Now, Manisha, I spoke to a lot of officials from Indigo and other airlines as well. Now, a lot of officials, without wanting to come on record, they're saying that, the 30-second clip that you're seeing on social media only shows you one part of the incident. Because, yes, by then the child had calmed down, but you hadn't seen the condition in which the child was when he entered the airport. And by then, the airline had to take a call whether we had to allow them boarding or not, because they're saying could be a flight risk to other passengers. But I saw your post and a couple of other co-passengers posts as well. They're saying the co-passengers were in fact okay with the child and the family that were traveling, so it really wasn't a risk to the other co-passengers. I also want clarity, were there certain passengers who were doctors who in fact also came forward and wanted to help the family?
No, I just want to say this very clearly that all the Indigo people you may have spoken to were not there. We were
Hmm.
there. All the passengers were not have objections. The passengers were all supportive of this child and the family boarding. The child had come in a state of distress, and he had had a meltdown, which is a quote unquote normal way of expressing distress for children with disabilities, right? And the whole point is that there was a doctor who said, I am willing to certify that this child is fit to travel. Otherwise, please call the doctor from the airport. But the
Hmm.
Indigo manager was not willing to listen. The Indigo manager was not willing to engage. Exactly what Captain is saying.
Hmm.
The Indigo staff did not so much as even go and offer a glass of water to the child or to the parents who were working very hard to calm him down, and they did succeed in calming him down. We saw them giving the child food, water, some medicine, and the child had completely calmed down. Now, if a child lets out expressions, right, which to people who may have never seen a child with so many
Hmm.
disabilities, it may sound uh, different, but this child was not dangerous for an adult world. This child was in a wheelchair. I'm just thinking, over the last 2 days, I've been thinking, how could this child have been a safety risk for
Hmm.
passengers? He would have been a 10 or 12-year-old. What would he have done? Would he have run amok on the flight? Or I really don't know. It defies imagination. And I'm just trying to
Hmm.
think, what was the Indigo manager thinking? Was he not able to see a 12-year-old
Yeah.
child in distress?
I think
Was he
that's
not
where my
able to
other
see that?
concern is.
It's a mindset issue.
Yeah. I want to understand what should be the ideal protocol as far as Indigo's behavior is concerned. Is the decision final for the manager, or should there have been more people who should have been consulted? Maybe a doctor should have been brought in to have a non partial view. And secondly, this once again raises the debate of sensitivity towards specially able children. Do we just don't have enough practice to deal with such situations which requires empathy and sensitivity first?
Look, even if we don't, if we for a second we don't look at a disabled patient, we look at a passenger with a heart issue traveling.
Hmm.
Uh, he or she may be having a certificate fit to travel, but at that moment before boarding might be experiencing some discomfort. So the manager is well within the rights uh, to ask the person, are you fit to travel? Do you have a certificate? I don't think you are. looking okay. The same could happen when the person is on board. The cabin crew could look at the person and say, no, there's some sort of discomfort. Maybe he or she is having a heart issue. So, what is the idea? The idea is to find out what has happened and how can we help. So, either call for a doctor on board or take the patient to the doctor. So,
Hmm.
here neither was done.
Hmm.
The the child was there sitting with the manager standing on his head. So if the person is seeing the child in distress, either you call for a doctor and seek an opinion. So
Correct.
that is an
Hmm.
expert telling you, rather than
Hmm.
you trying to uh, scratch your memory and look up in your notes what is written and
Hmm.
what looks like a panic, or
Okay.
some people say excitement. Everybody has a
Hmm.
different definition. Let the
Sure.
doctors decide. There were doctors there. The doctors were willing to vouch. And the regulation
Hmm.
says any registered medical practitioner, it need not the person need not be a specialist, can give a
Okay.
certificate fit to fly. So legality
Okay.
is covered. Practicality, you have to see uh, how best can you help the person, make them comfortable. That
Correct.
is from the time the person arrives. So
Hmm.
don't send them to a crowded place. A child with disability or who is already distressed or distraught,
Sure.
don't send them to a isolated place where the person can
Hmm.
relax, calm down. Don't send them straight that the flight is about to go to the lounge, which is full of people staring. Then you stand on the head and put more pressure on the family and the
Hmm.
child. So how do you know what sort of threat the child is perceiving from the manager standing on the head, talking on the phone,
Correct.
and
Hmm.
how loud was he? So you are not looking from the child's perspective. You're looking from the airline's perspective. So the
Hmm.
child could be
Okay.
feeling threatened because of all this commotion and what was being said.
Hmm.
You
I think
couldn't be
that's
getting
exactly what
negative
Anisha was also
connotations.
saying earlier, that by the end of it, the child, in fact, was pretty terrified with what the events that had unfolded. Manisha, I want to understand from you, because your post is what actually created this news. How did you react to the statements that you saw from the airlines? The first statement said, "We stand by our team. We've made every possible arrangement for the family. They've flown with us before. We've booked a hotel room for them, and we booked the next flight out. So our intent was in the right place." And the second statement that we saw by the CEO, Ronojoy Datta, offering to give this electrical wheelchair. How did you see the response of the airline?
I just thought it was I was ashamed. I was ashamed at the misrepresentation of facts, and I was really horrified. I could not believe that these stories could be spun off, because first of all, the person, only after the flight had departed,
Hmm.
did the manager say, you can board the next flight if you want. And the father said, मैं अभी इस बच्चे को लेकर ये 3 घंटे ये एयरपोर्ट में कैसे बैठूंगा. There was no conversation about, we will give you accommodation at night. And I think in another show, Captain, it was you who said that this accommodation was not an act of benevolence, right, Captain? That's what you said, right?
Right.
It was a right.
Hmm.
Okay, this person just stood there. We saw an absolute power imbalance. We saw humiliation. We did not see any kind of effort of the Indigo staff dialoguing, explaining, understanding. None of that. And then what I found really shocking, and all I can say is that Indigo has, and the CEO of Indigo has outed himself and the culture of his company when he has said that he stands by the decision of this person, because he has very callously and very unapologetically and very casually condoned a behavior, practice, and culture of humiliation and exclusion by
Hmm.
his staff. In
Okay.
another in another
Hmm.
interview, he said, when he was asked that, this person, this manager, was calling the child, uh, was asking the child to be normal, and had compared the child's behavior with that of a drunkard patient, the CEO of Indigo very lightly and blithely said, poor choice of words. Is
Hmm.
this Is this what an inclusive company, and
Yeah.
is this how the CEO of an inclusive company speaks?
Fair point that Manisha has made. Before I wrap up, Captain, two things that I want to understand from you. Many are pointing out that this was one isolated case. Should the entire airline be seen with the same spectrum, because they're one of the most well-do airlines as far as India is concerned? So, is it fair to taint them or paint them with the same brush? That's one part of my question. The other part is, of course, we've seen the aviation minister tweet very, very aggressively about it. As far as his fact finding team is concerned, a timeline of 1 week has been given. How crucial will be the findings of the DGCA team in terms of setting out a precedent for other airlines as well?
We have to look at the culture of the airline. This is an occurrence which has highlighted the culture of, or exposed the culture rather, from top to bottom. You've seen the CEO talking with arrogance. There was no humility. The letter said, "We regret." They did not apologize. The difference is regret means, okay, we are sorry, but we are not at fault. But if you apologize, means yes, we will introspect and we will look at our procedures, our training, and we will take steps. That is the difference between, if you see the Japanese culture, there,
Hmm.
if somebody apologizes, they really mean that we are going to rectify it. There is no, they don't shy from taking fault, even if it is not their fault. Had they basically apologized and handled it well, this wouldn't have snowballed into such a big issue.
Correct.
But for the arrogance of the top management and the letter, the wording of the letter, uh, coming to the point of DGCA and the minister, if you see, anytime if I compare an accident which happens, the government announces ex gratia payment.
Hmm.
Uh, they just don't want to give money to people, but it is their duty bound to protect the life of people. And in an accident, they basically fail to protect the life of people. That is why they're compensating. Here,
Hmm.
the minister has personally intervened because, as per the constitution, they're supposed to protect the life, liberty, equality. As per the Disability Act,
Hmm.
the basically they have to do some face saving. So that is
Okay.
why he has intervened, because at the highest level, it is a failure.
Hmm.
And the DGCA has sent a fact finding
Hmm.
uh, team. I'm not sure what their role is, because
Hmm.
DGCA is basically constituted to look after the safety of the passengers.
Yeah.
There's a separate, the DGCA regulation clearly says that there is a nodal officer in the airline and there's an appellate authority that will
Okay.
investigate and come out with a report in a given time frame. If
Sure.
the aggrieved person is not happy, then there is a commission,
Hmm.
uh, a disability commission, which will look into all these matters. But
Okay.
DGCA is not equipped to handle the
Hmm.
human factor and the
Hmm.
psychology of the person, all these things. They can only look at the rules, that we have a regulation which lists 10 things, were they followed or
Sure.
not followed. If they
Okay.
feel they were not followed, they can only penalize or uh, take some action against the
Okay.
airline, which I doubt they'll take. DGCA can only take
Okay.
action against individuals, but against operators, in the past, I've never seen them taking any
Okay.
action or strict
Okay.
measures.
Okay, so this is where things currently stand. As I said, there is an investigation that's currently on. The timeline that's been given by the aviation minister is 1 week, and we'll know more about it. But as I said, the family, of course, is building their own pressure. They've rejected the offer by Indigo. Indigo is still claiming that this was procedure that was being followed because they couldn't risk the lives of other passengers. We've, of course, reached out to the Indigo CEO as well for time to understand the airline's version as well. We'll update our viewers when we do have a comment from him. But I'd like to thank Manisha and Captain Amit for taking out time and joining us in this very, very sensitive yet very crucial information. Thank you for all our viewers for tuning in as
Thank you.
Thank you.